CNN learning all 16 of Georgia's fake electors who tried to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results and turn the state to former President Trump are now targets of the Fulton County DA's criminal investigation. This is yet another major sign that the investigation into Trump's efforts to overturn the election is proceeding rapidly in Georgia. There has been a flurry of activity in recent days. Donald Trump's former White House attorney Ty Cobb told us, quote, the Georgia case under the control of the Fulton County District Attorney appears to pose a serious threat of indictment to the former president. Evan Perez is out front. And Evan, obviously those words from Ty Cobb are significant. And the Fulton County DA is moving quickly, sending letters to all 16 of those fake electors, saying they're no longer just witnesses, but targets of a criminal investigation. Tell me how significant this is, what it could mean for Trump.
Well, it's a big deal for a prosecutor to go from the position where these people were considered to be witnesses, Aaron, and now they are possibly going to face charges. That what it tells us is that the prosecutors believe that there's additional information that they've gotten, which they believe could lead to charges. And of course, these are people who were working directly with the former president's campaign, with his lawyers. We know that they were coordinating this from the former president's campaign and his legal team. And of course, that brings us closer to Donald Trump himself. And that's the reason why Ty Cobb is making that statement, because from the Georgia investigation's perspective, you can see how you can get from the people who were coordinating this effort to advance these fake electors to the former president, who was the man driving all of this, according to some of the witness testimony we've heard.
And now we mentioned Fulton County and how quickly things are moving there. Just yesterday, we found out that the Fulton County DA subpoenaed the Republican Congressman Jody Hice, right, who is a major ally of President Trump's, who also voted to overturn the election on January 6th. Yahoo News reported that the DA sent letters to multiple Georgia Republicans that they could be indicted. How quickly, Evan, from the context that you have, is this investigation moving in Georgia, this criminal investigation there, compared to the DOJ?
Well, there's a couple of things that are happening. The Georgia investigation, frankly, is a lot simpler. We're talking about one state, right? And I think you can see from the speed with which Fani Willis's office is moving that they believe they have something that they can get at least possibly maybe bringing charges and maybe having some of those people end up cooperating against someone higher, which would be, of course, the former president. In the case of the Justice Department, they have perhaps a little more complicated investigation because they are looking at the process across 7 states, Aaron. And so it's not just Georgia. They're looking at other states and all of these electors, dozens of them. So that is a complicated investigation, which is also, by the way, moving a lot more quickly than people realize.
Yeah. Right, Evan Perez, thank you very much.
All 16, yes, 16 of the fake electors in Georgia who were part of the plan to overturn the 2020 election on behalf of Donald Trump are now targets in a criminal investigation tonight. That's according to the Fulton County, Georgia prosecutors looking into Trump's election interference in the state. So does this mean they're closer to deciding on criminal charges? And is the probe drawing any closer to Donald Trump himself? Back with me now, Doug Jones, Shan Wu, and Doug High. I start here because you think about the ways in which Georgia, you know this, Doug, pretty unique in terms of all of the sort of states that have had discussions around the lies around the election. Georgia didn't seem to be buying it when it came to, obviously, Perdue versus Kemp. Kemp did not have that angle. Is this an example of there being the Trump fatigue that Mick Mulvaney was talking about, the idea of, look, he sort of cleared the way for others because they're not buying it anymore. They don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, what we see when Donald Trump goes all in for a candidate is it guarantees him about 1/3 of the vote. And then the rest of it is up to those candidates. And what you had was a popular governor who took on Trump on one thing, but otherwise, was very firmly in line with, by and large, Trump policies against somebody who had not only lost their Senate race, so in Donald Trump's parlance, a loser, but somebody who ran a terrible campaign and had lost 2 years earlier with some help from Trump. Republicans are trying to inch away from Donald Trump. They know they can't run from him. But what you hear on Capitol Hill privately, sometimes in a very coded language, sentence or two by Mitch McConnell, something that suggests Republicans moving forward to 2024 can do other things. And that's where you're seeing more and more Ron DeSantis's, Tim Scott's got a book coming out, you know, a lot of those people that Mick Mulvaney talked about who all want to run. And politicians are often self-interested, big shock. Getting Trump
No
out of the
offense
way
to
would
you,
help.
former senator. We don't mean you.
Yeah,
We don't,
but
everyone but you.
none of those people are condemning Trump's actions, though. They're still wrapping themselves with Trump. Every candidate out there in Alabama and everywhere else, they're wrapping themselves in Trump and saying that, you know, the election was stolen, and they're not condemning what they've heard out. It's just nothing but crickets coming from Capitol Hill on the actions that were took and the threat to democracy that we saw. And that, I think, is a real tragedy. I mean, a
What you
real
hear
tragedy.
privately and what you hear publicly is, unless they're Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger, often mirror images of what reality is.
I always hear that. And I can tell you, as somebody from the electorate and thinking about the idea of the public versus the private conversations, I associate those who sort of shirk away publicly as the shrinking violets who wouldn't be asking for the chance to lead. If you want to be a member of Congress, I always think to myself, well, maybe you should be the person who, you know, consequences be damned. I know that's naive, perhaps, in the way of Washington, D.C., you're shaking your head. But the idea of, you know, why do you think still, all this time in, there is the reluctance to say publicly about just something as basic as what Mick Mulvaney even had to say, the idea of, look, there's a fatigue.
Because of what Doug just said, that there's 30% of the people out there that, regardless of what you say, is going to be a Trump voter, and they're going to be there for him, and they're going to defend him at all costs. And every one of those politicians do not want to alienate that 30% of the vote. And that's why you got all of that list that Mick talked about. Not a single one of them has condemned the actions of Donald Trump and what happened before, during, and after. They have talked about and said it's time to move on. But hell, everybody says that. It's time to move on. When you know you've got a problem, you say, we don't need to look at the past. We need to look forward. Folks need to step up, and they need to put this country first and start talking about democracy and wrapping themselves in that flag instead of the Donald Trump flag of silence.